We have a big rebrand, some information on the Pioneer, and a lot of hirings to go over on this week's episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. Back again, episode number 209 of the Indie Ball Report podcast. I'm Nick, he's Will, and we have a surprisingly large amount of hirings for the very beginning of March. And we got the Pioneer League that we're talking about, which, always is a good sign. And then we got a rebrand that I don't think any of us really expected nor asked for. So, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, and a rebrand that nobody asked for, I think, is a good way to put it, I would say.
Yeah, I would certainly say so. And obviously, this rebrand got a lot of discussion and whatnot. And I guess we could just kind of jump headlong into this week, get it really going here. And that rebrand that we've been mentioning came about on Monday with the Lexington Legends, or now formerly Lexington Legends, I suppose. We were kind of teased some sort of announcement at the very beginning of the week on March the 6th. No one really knew what it was going to be. And then, bam, rebrand. The Legends are now the Lexington Counterclocks. This is supposed to pay homage to the horse racing tradition of the state of Kentucky, as horses race counterclockwise. It's, not the kind of thing that you would know if you're not a horse racing fan, but then again, you want something that connects to the, local culture. And Lexington, I believe, being the state capital of Kentucky, it kind of fits that you pick something that your state is known for. Of course, horse racing is that for Kentucky as a whole. They're going to bring in some new mascots and whatnot. Haas, who is essentially a jockey, and then Dinger, which, if I have this right, is a clock with a bat that looks a lot like the Dum Dum Lollipop guy. So, you can make of that what you will. Obviously, we'll get into the reception from the greater fan base and what we think of everything. But before we do all that, what's kind of the initial reaction to this rebrand from you, Will?
Yeah, not really a lot of positives. I'll start by saying this, Nick. With a new ownership group, and you wanted to make a new brand going into indie ball, I'm all right with that, right? I'm totally fine with that. I was fine if they wanted to keep the Lexington Legends. I understood the reasons for them doing that at the time, to show fans hey, even though we're not affiliated, we're still the Legends. We're doing literally all the same things, just in a different league. I'm fine with if they wanted to rebrand. I just think this was very poorly executed. I think that I like them trying to use the horse racing culture. Mm-hmm. However, if I totally understand if you wanted to play off the horse racing history and the culture in Kentucky, that's all right with me. I don't know how. It's just a very what's the best way I can say this? It's a very weird detail to pick out of horse racing. Horse racing is a huge genre, and you could pick a lot of things from that. But out of all of that, out of all the things you could possibly, I don't know, the thoroughbreds or something like that, where everyone's yeah, that means that's talking about horse racing. That's trying to honor the culture. You don't want to make fans think, not even just in Lexington, but just everywhere. You don't want to make fans really think about wow, how does this connect to your local community? Because then you did, out of all of the details of horse racing you could possibly pick, you picked the fact that they race counterclockwise. Okay? Yeah. That is a quite odd detail for you to emphasize and build your whole team around. And then you kind of just expect people to just get it. I don't think it's a good idea whenever you rebrand, and it doesn't even have to be baseball, but anything.
Yeah.
You don't want people to have to think in depth about, wow, what is the significance behind this? like, good to be honest with you, like, if I didn't read any of that and it was just like counterclocks, I would have no idea that had anything to do with horses. No idea whatsoever. I think the logo itself isn't very good. Honestly, I think it looked like it was made through clip art.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just poorly executed. I understand that I won't say a total need for a rebrand because I don't think there was an explicit need for one, but I understand if they wanted to do one just because of the new ownership group and maybe more of a long-term thing. But just if you're going to play off horse racing, which is fine, the very odd detail you chose to build a brand around is the fact that they race counterclockwise. It's very confusing, ridiculous, and poorly executed in my view.
Yeah, see, on one hand, I do appreciate them going with something a little out of the box here. Like, yeah, you mentioned they could have went with like a thoroughbreds or a Mustang, something like that, but that is admittedly
Right.
a bit generic, you know. I mean, it's not terribly creative, and especially with more modern names in independent ball and just minor league sports in general. You want it to be more fun. You want it to be more kind of out there. You want to kind of be more unique and stand outish. I get it. You want to differentiate your brand from other brands in the area. Cause I mean, using like thoroughbreds, Mustangs, stallions, you know, that does make it sound a lot like kind of a high school team. Like if you were to tell me it was like the Lexington County Stallions taking on the Capitol High Thoroughbreds, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably a high school matchup. I could buy that, you know. And it's not like it's a billing situation where you've had Mustangs for quite some time now and it's already established there. You know, that's a bit of a different setup here. Also, I mean, like we're talking market sizes here. Lexington has better odds of supporting, you know, some level of a professional team outside of the minor league baseball team. Billings just doesn't, you know, there's a scaling difference, but that's neither here nor there. Back to the counterclockwise rebrand. So I don't mind going with something like that. I don't mind, you know, saying, all right, let's go ahead and pick an aspect of horse racing, because there's always going to have to come down to that, because that's the big kind of bread and butter cultural thing of Kentucky. It'd be like going with New Jersey and taking kind of either a shore element to it, playing on kind of like the whole Jersey attitude type of thing. You know, something like that would be the obvious one for New Jersey. In exchange, horse racing is for Kentucky. So I don't mind counterclocks. I do kind of think it's growing on me a little bit. I still don't exactly love the brand. You know, I can't tell if that's just, you know, it's going to grow on me over time type of thing. But that said, I don't mind them getting a little out there with it. I suppose they could have said something like, they could have went with like, say, the Lucky Shoes or something like that. Although that may already be the name of a summer college team. I don't recall, but you probably could have done something along those lines. Where my issue with the rebrand kind of is also with the logos, because I think I mentioned this to you when it first came out. I was like, these things look like they should be on like a throwback uniform, like a retro uniform. In case you haven't seen the logos, link in show notes. You guys already know that, but it's essentially a jockey on a horse backwards because, you know, counterclockwise. Everything's going to be in reverse. The dum-dum dude with the bat, and then the main logo is a reverse C that says counterclockwise. Again, it's put in the reverse, so it's not essentially mirrored version of how a regular C in counterclockwise would be inverted. There you go. All to play on the counterclockwise brand, which again, kind of cute, kind of keeps on, you know, I guess kind of keeps with the theme of everything. That said, it also is kind of annoying. It looks kind of awkward. It's not exactly great. And these all look like the kind of logo and branding that, like you said, it's kind of clip art. Like, it is very generic. It is very, you know, it'd be fine if you're like, okay, well, we're going to do like Throwback Thursday for whenever we have a home game. It's like, I don't know, 15 home games a year we're going to play on Thursday night. So something like that, I would love that. I think you could do a lot with it. It just felt like you need to kind of have a better design, and it feels like it was done in-house. They didn't hire anybody to do it. It just feels very generic, like that. As far as the reasoning behind it, I kind of heard that, you know, the Legends brand around town isn't so good. Apparently past ownership didn't leave great connections with businesses and sponsorships in the community. So I really do get the sense that this is just like, even if more could have been done about this, they want to get that kind of dividing line up as soon as humanly possible. And if that's the case, then it just feels like kind of a desperate attempt to repair a relationship. And this isn't what's going to fix it. You know, obviously if you're in the business community in Lexington or the greater Lexington area, the rebrand isn't going to change your mind. You're probably already aware that Nate Lyons owns this team instead of Andy Shea. You're probably very much aware of that. And if you had a problem with the way that Shea ran the team, or, you know, you had negative experiences dealing with the team in the past few years, you know, a rebrand isn't really going to fix that. And you look at the kind of the reaction from both online and in community, it's extremely mixed. Some people like the brand but don't like the logo. Other people like both the logo and the brand. Some people hate both. You know, it's a really mixed thing. And so when you look at it like that, it's hard to say like, oh, well, now that the brand's here, I'm willing to do business with an organization I had a negative experience with in the past 18 months and roll the dice again, when it's like, well, nothing else has meaningfully changed outside of the ownership deal. And people are going to tend to cling to those negative experiences, especially if you're the kind of business that's going to be looking to get a ballpark sponsorship or something like that. You know, you don't have enough money to be wrong twice. So why would you roll the dice on it again when last year when you did the whole baseball thing, it didn't quite go your way? So that's kind of my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I think that, again, I think you make a good point about the Legends brand around town not exactly being in the best graces. And, you know, I think there's a lot of, I don't think you can blame them. Because it's the way that last season really went, and especially with the new ownership group coming in, you want to kind of differentiate yourself. I just think that it was poorly executed and confusing, and I think we're both in agreement that the logo for a full team brand, for a long-term team brand, is not good enough. It's not good enough for what a team's branding long term at this level of baseball should be, and that's the disappointing aspect of it. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how like jerseys look, but just at first glance, I think the rebrand is confusing. And the other thing is I mean, did they do these, like, did they have, like, fans put in suggestions? Like, if they did, I didn't hear about it.
Yeah, no, it just felt like it was kind of done overnight. You know, it felt like and I do wonder how those virtual town halls went that they held, you know, back in December and late 2022. Because, you know, if they got that kind of sense that there really isn't a positive reception or any sort of real connection to the Legends brand, then yeah, go ahead and redo everything. If they got a sense for what direction it should be taken, and then, you know, this isn't a terrible outlook, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it could have been done better, at least in my view. Yeah.
Agreed.
We have a couple other things left just to say on this before we move on elsewhere. There actually is currently a change.com petition, which may be the most useless thing on the internet, but, you know, it's always great to see, kind of a reading of the wind, in a sense, to change the name back to the Lexington Legends. And at least when I was doing the notes for this last night at about 12 o'clock at night. So about 10, 12 hours ago from when we're recording this, there was about 1,575 signatures on that change.com. Yeah. So, I mean, like,
a lot.
Yeah, they want, about 2,500. So, they got about, what's that? About 65% of their goal in about 2 or 3 days. So not a bad job by them, certainly there. And of course, there was never a formal reason announced for the rebrand. We're all just kind of getting the sense that, okay, it's kind of based off of the previous ownership and whatnot here. I just want to go over quickly the post I made when this came out because, well, I spent a long time typing it out because it's about an 8-tweet rant. So I'm just going to kind of read through that. If you're following on Twitter at IndieBallPod, then you've probably already seen the rant, but, I get the sense not everybody does. So I'll just read it out real quick. We'll go over any points I made, and then we'll move on to some other news that we have to get to today. So I was saying that I understand that the reputation around Lexington was not what the Legends hoped for or needed, and I'll defer to anyone that knows more about the situation than I, but it feels like the rebrand was a mix of unnecessary / desperation to repair it. Anyone in the community that didn't want to do business with them before isn't going to change their mind because of this. For them, it's lipstick on a pig. It's the organization / organization's past that's their beef, not the brand. Yes, it's more of a visual way of standing apart from past ownership, but that seems a minor part to fixing the problem. The business community will not be moved by this unless you have genuine knowledge that the fans associate that brand, meaning the Legends brand, with dysfunction and hold a negative opinion towards it and that it's keeping them away. Even then, I question if people are going to realize new brand equals new owner or if they'll even care. A lot of people aren't moved by that and cling to negative experiences / stories as guiding lights. Again, I'm not in Lexington, so maybe this is more needed than I realized, but judging by the sentiment online, which admittedly is a small vocal sample size, it seems very mixed to the rebrand. Maybe that's just fans disliking something new, or the new brand isn't what they wanted, but not something uncommon. But that seems to be what they think of it. Although it is kind of funny they went counterclocks, I guess they wanted to turn back the clocks to the good old days when the brands were stronger. As far as the brand's concerned, I'm fine with it. I just kind of went on with the whole, it looks like something out of 1975. It looks like a throwback, and the whole clock looking like the lollipop dude. In summary, it feels like desperation to change the brand that had a rough stretch of recent. To make it work will require making it abundantly clear that Nate Lyons owns this team. He's new and different from the last guy. I just don't know it can work. Essentially, the summary of all of that and that whole rant was pretty much what I've just been saying, where it feels like it's a desperation play, and if it's more of an appeal to make yourself stand apart from previous ownership, the important people are straight up not going to be moved by this, and the common people probably aren't going to love it because they have an association with the Legends brand, which they clearly didn't have a problem with last year if they kept going to the ballpark. But the one other point before I toss it back to you, Will, that I'm going to kind of bring up that I wanted to talk a little bit about was that, do people really know there's new ownership? And are they going to really understand that this rebrand is new ownership? Because I'm sure there's a decent amount of people in Lexington that kind of half follow the news, didn't really keep up with like the actual boots on the ground reality behind the scenes of, Lexington last year essentially dismantling their whole front office, essentially getting rid of all their baseball ops guys. And then having the various other incidents we've seen, with the shooting at the ballpark and everything like that. I'm sure there's some people that saw the shooting news because, they watched the regular 5 o'clock news. And that's one of the few things they know about the situation. They didn't realize they were sold. They missed that somewhere. And now they kind of are like, oh, look, they're changing the brand to disassociate themselves with all that. Like it's going to work. If people don't realize that there's new ownership in, I could very well see them just going, oh, wow, look, they're trying to shed all that stuff from last year with this. Or maybe they just don't even care. So that's the one question I have to ask.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an easy answer to it. It's just a matter of why was this needed? And again, I'm not an expert on the situation as far as what's going on in Lexington, to know for sure. But I do know that it was poorly executed. And you're right, Nick, because at the end of the day, the important people that you have to win back is the fans. And I don't know that, that the rebrand and clearly the fans are not. Like, I can't, you don't want to speak for every single fan, because I'm sure there are fans out there that like this, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people on social media who've said that they like this. There's a lot who don't. And, at the very least, you see a pretty common denominator when it comes to, independent league teams and rebranding or naming teams maybe that are just starting. They have a name the team contest. They have people put in stuff. They have a vote. And that's not necessarily to say that they will 100% do what is voted on, but there's a pretty clear consensus. That's generally what they're going to roll with. So, and just to try and get involved with people, because at the end of the day, the fans are the only ones that keep independent league baseball organizations and teams going. They are the sole revenue stream and that teams absolutely need. And especially when the relationship is clearly not as great as it could be, should be, was, however you want to say it. I'm just surprised there was not a public, hey, we're rebranding. Let's
more community input to it.
The more community input. And I know in their press release, they said that we did like listening sessions, surveys, one-on-one conversations. I don't really know what that means. What the hell is, I don't know what kind of, I think they intentionally vague phrasing there, you could say. And I don't know what was going on behind closed doors, but I feel like if you're trying to win back the fans, you should involve the fans in a much bigger way, than kind of just saying, we're the counterclocks now. I don't know. It just was not executed well. And I think that there's, the fact that, and not to say that the petition is going to change the minds of Nathan Lyons or whatever, but, I think it does show that, hey, how over 1,500 people are pissed off enough about this to sign a petition and create an account and sign a petition, to get rid of the name change. I mean, if that many people in an indie ball market are that upset about it, there's something else going on there. And clearly that whatever they were trying to do as far as repairing relations with the community is not moved. And that's, and the only way that you're really going to see the repercussions of that are when baseball season starts. And that's going to be the thing we have to watch.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that. Obviously, the only point that I kind of disagree with is just that there's other revenue streams, but the fan attendance, the actual fan-based revenue is by far probably the largest between your attendance, your actual like game day sales, things like that. Obviously, though, selling those outfield wall advertisements, selling the between inning advertisements, things like that.
Sure.
Those are big money ones too. You're picking up tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in some cases, dollars for the year, with them, depending on what exactly it is you're selling and how much of it you are moving. But either way, the fan revenue is extremely important. If you don't have any attendance, it's, all gate driven for this league. So if you don't have that gate revenue, it's not going to end up going well for you. But I would agree that I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get more of a clear cut. We're going to do a rebrand, or at least we're considering changing things up, refreshing.
Publicly.
Yeah.
Publicly.
That we didn't get an announcement like that, or like give it one of those, hey, if we were to do this, what kind of direction do you want trended? I mean, like, let's also not pretend for a second, like, the Legends brand, like, at first, if we were to go back to when the Legends first started, and you were to be told, yeah, we're gonna name a baseball team the Lexington Legends, like, what would our reaction genuinely be to, right? Like, would we be like, oh, well, that's just such a great name. I love the alliteration. Everything about it sounds good. Or we go, that's kind of presumptuous, like, you're kind of putting the target on your back. They're like, oh, we're legends, and you haven't even taken the field yet. And like, that seems kind of like, I guess I'll use the word dated for lack of a better term on the spot. But back from the How I Met Your Mother era where everyone kept running around with the Barney Stinson legendary thing, we'd mock them a little bit for that, where it's just like, what the hell kind of name is Legends? But, again, I would also agree that you probably don't have as many upset people if you at least consult the community on it. And in the grand scheme of things, I think you kind of have to expect that a rebrand's going to go poorly, right? Like, no one's ever going to really be thrilled about it, and the people that love the name probably aren't going to be as vocal as people that hate the name. But I would agree, though, more community input would have been nice. And one thing is for certain, it's no jackalopes.
No jackalopes. Hey, most rebrands are poorly received at first, but not the freaking jackalopes.
No, the jackalopes and the yard goats were like the only two rebrands where people said, you know what, this is good. This is a positive.
Right. Exactly.
But I suppose I've talked about this for nearly a half hour. We probably should move on to the other things we have to do today. On that note, we will move on to the Atlantic League Silver Anniversary team. That is, of course, assuming you had nothing else left to say about the Legends rebrand, right?
I think we've talked it. I think we've covered it all.
All right. Just want to make sure before we moved on to the silver team of the Atlantic League, which is gotten their 6th member. And I got to applaud you, Atlantic League. You announced this not 25 minutes after we finished recording last week. If you would have just done that like 45 minutes earlier, we could have finished up our whole American Association thing, recorded this nice little bit about this particular player, slapped it on and talked about him alongside of some of the other guys. I believe last week we talked about Lincoln Michelson. And this week we get to talk about a Long Island Duck legend who I didn't realize played for Somerset for a year, but apparently did. And that is Ray Navarrete. He becomes the 6th member of the Atlantic League Silver team. The 2009 Player of the Year is also a 4-time postseason All-Star, only one of 2 players to have such an honor, a 3-time Atlantic League champion, the single season doubles record holder with 50 in 1 year, a 5-time All-Star, and the all-time leader in doubles, extra base hits, 2nd all-time in RBIs, and 3rd all-time in home runs and games played. 9 seasons in the Atlantic League and independent league baseball as a whole from 2005 to 2013, 8 in Long Island, 1 in Somerset. That one was his first year in 2005. Final accumulation of stats. Going to mention these because he is the all-time leader in half of these categories. He played 939 games. He managed 1,031 hits, 264 doubles, 9 triples, 143 home runs, 578 RBIs, a slash line of 284, 365, 479, and a grand total of 416 extra base hits. He'll join Glenn Murray and Jeff Nettles as the lone 3 batters on the team, and he'll join Lincoln Michelson, Tim Kaine, Mike Ifoyle, and the previously mentioned Glenn Murray and Jeff Nettles also as members of the Silver Anniversary team. So I look forward to having another one to talk about next week after they announce him in about 2 hours from now when we're done recording. So good on them for that.
Nick, you almost got the pronunciation.
I knew I was going to mess it up. I told you before we got on. I'm tired.
You got off to a great start. Great start. And then you blew it at the end.
Let me guess, it's Navarrete and not Navarrete?
Correct.
All right. That's, I couldn't tell. And I was like, I forget what we said before we jumped on. And I was like, screw it. Just go with one of them. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but one thing that does matter is Ray Navarrete's a really good player.
Yeah.
And probably the best Long Island Duck in franchise history when it comes to cumulative numbers and stats or I mean, him and Lou Ford are the top two, really.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, yeah, Navarrete is just one of the best hitters that I think this league has ever seen. And, you know, being the career leader in doubles, extra base hits, second in RBIs, third in home runs, I think speaks enough for itself. But yeah, Navarrete had so many huge moments. To be honest with you, I actually did not know he broke in with Somerset either. Yeah. I didn't know that till today. But I didn't know he originally started with Somerset. But I tell you, he had an unbelievable career, was such a great hitter, and a complete no-brainer to put on this team. As no-brainer, as much of a no-brainer as you could see it. You know, I mean, a lot of these have been no-brainers so far, but I think that I'm interested to see, you know, as we kind of continue to work down the roster, if there's any surprises. But Navarrete, certainly not a surprise. Unbelievable career. So still well loved within the Ducks organization. So many huge moments there as well. But I think, yeah, Navarrete, complete no-brainer, just an unbelievable player, and so glad that he got his honors because he deserves it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think he definitely deserves it. I didn't realize, you know, how consistent he was until last night when I was putting together all the notes and I looked at his stats and like, yeah, he has the one, you know, MVP year in 2009, but I never really kind of realized how consistent he was. There was never really like an eye-popping number, but there was never really a bad season either. And that kind of model of consistent you see in the whole aggregate where you're averaging over a hit a game. You're averaging essentially an extra base hit every 2 games. So you really start to get an appreciation for just how consistent of a player he was. And he certainly, you know, like you said, on that Mount Rushmore of Ducks, and he is one of the better hitters that this league has seen. Maybe not one of the first that comes to mind for some people. Probably not one of the first that comes to mind for newer fans of the league, but certainly a fantastic hitter in their own right. And really, he's one of the first Ducks on this list. I know Kane, for a short period of time, was a Long Island Duck, but the rest of them really aren't, you know? So, yeah, it's kind of surprising we took this long to get here. Obviously, though, we're going to get, I think, a few more Ducks on this list, too, but a great addition.
Yeah, we will definitely have some few. Yeah, we'll definitely have a few more.
Like, we know we're going to get Lou Ford. That's a given. I kind of also assume we're going to have Daryl Thompson on this list, although he's a blue crab, not a Duck. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see who else goes on there. You mentioned if there's going to be any surprises. I know earlier when we first discussed this, you know, I said I want to not see any kind of like Rich Hill types where it's like you spent half a year in this league, but they keep publicizing you. And I stand by that, but I would like to see kind of like 1 or 2 kind of wild card ones where it's like, ooh, okay. I wasn't expecting to see them on there. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing that. And maybe that's, you know, trying to have it both ways, but in any case, I'd still like to see it. But, yeah. So, on that note, we got staffing news we got to get to, and then we have our Pioneer League North review that we have to get to as well. In the staffing news, we're going to work our way up from least important to most important, and then we'll be on to the Pioneer League after that. Wild Things, they have hired Ryan Whithorn as their new bench coach. He's going to replace Aaron Eggleston, who left to go to the Atlantic League's Frederick Club. So they have that replacement. He's going to work with the infielders and the hitters primarily, and he's also going to coach first base. This is Whithorn, of course. He's also an assistant coach at Chaffey College out in Rancho Cucamonga, California. It looks like Chaffey is essentially a community college. That's the best I could get on it, but I don't really know for certain there. He spent a little bit of time in Missoula last year as kind of an assistant coach, and he also got in a game as well when they got desperate. He's a former collegiate ball player too, so, you know, that does make sense. I believe it's from Williamette up in Salem, Oregon. So it's kind of surprising he didn't wind up, you know, saying, oh, let me give it a year or two to try and, you know, figure out how to play. He could have played for the Maverick League It's right there in Salem anyway, right?
I was going to bring it up that we love Salem, Oregon on the show.
Yeah, we're big fans of the Maverick League because someone has to be, and he could have been
someone has to be.
He could have been a Maverick. He could have been a Volcano. He could have been whatever the other two are. He could have been any one of the four. But even still, instead he opted to go be a assistant coach on Michael Schlatt's staff, which, is probably a good decision. We had Michael on once, and he was very nice to talk to, and he seems like he's pretty good at his job, seeing as in 2 years in Missoula, he has nearly 180 wins. So that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, pretty good, you could say.
Yeah, I would say so. A 66 win season and a 9 win season. We're going to talk about the Paddleheads in 15 minutes, but either way, the point remains, Missoula good staff to be on if you want to kind of learn the ropes. He seems to be fairly young. I think he's about 25. I couldn't find an exact age, but yeah, he seemed to be about that old. So, any real strong opinions on this one?
No strong opinions, but seems like a solid hire, at least on the surface.
Yeah, seems fairly young. Tom Vaith is also a pretty good guy to learn from. So I would say that's probably a solid stepping point. I'll be interested to see how long he stays in Washington, PA, and I'll be interested to see how all this goes. But yeah, these are all Frontier League hirings, by the way. So we go to the Valley Cats, who hired Jessica Guido, I believe is how it's pronounced. Guido, or Guido. It's one or the other. I'm going to go with Guido because that's a lot more fun. Guido. Yeah, that sounds a lot more fun too. So I'm going to go with that. Although I'm thinking it's probably Guido. I probably should have also just sent a text to Matt Callahan and been like, how do you pronounce your assistant GM's last name? So that way I don't sound like a jackass on air. But, we're going to do the thing that's more fun and more true to this show, which is just mispronouncing it and then having someone correct me later on. So we're going to do that. Either way, she's their new assistant GM. Been with the organization since 2011, so about 12 years or so now. Started as a box office manager. Then in 2017 moved up to the ticket sales and operations manager position, and now is the assistant GM. Their last assistant GM rather, left to become the general manager of the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. So it does seem like this position has some upward mobility, and all in all, an assistant GM is mainly in charge of sales, mainly in charge of kind of like the side of things that are a lot less fun when you think of a GM or an assistant GM, a lot of the business end of things, a lot of the financial end of things, and it does seem like this is kind of a natural stepping point, and all things considered, I think it's a pretty solid hire I guess it's more of a promotion than a hiring. Either way, to move up someone that's familiar with the organization, familiar with the area, obviously, and seemingly has done well, judging off of attendance sales, and dealt with the shift in the pandemic of, affiliated to unaffiliated pretty well, I'd say. So I like it for as much as you can really like an assistant GM hiring.
Yeah, I think, you want to try and keep things in-house as much as possible when you're looking at those type of promotions. And yeah, I mean, she's been with the team for a long time. So assistant general manager now seems to make a lot of sense, but there's a lot of behind the scenes work that those positions try to do. But yeah, seems like a good promotion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on that note, we will swing over to every Valley Cat fan's favorite team, which is the Sussex County Miners, who have hired Vinny Sangiamino, I believe is how that's going to be pronounced. Sangiamino.
No, but I don't think you say like E. I think it's just Sangiamino.
It could be Sangiamino.
No, Sangiamino. Maybe.
They hired Vinny as their new GM. He has no real baseball experience outside of a collegiate career at Rutgers. And he's 37. And he spent like 10 years working with the Phoenix Center place that apparently tries to get young adults, 21 and younger, with autism jobs. And then he also did some stuff with blockchain and Web3, which all I know about blockchain is it's involved in crypto. And that's never a vote of confidence when you're involved with anything crypto. And I feel like this is also the part where, like, our good friend Rob Pinsner DMs me. Is like, okay, so here's the deal with blockchain and Web3. And then I learn exactly what blockchain and Web3 is because, I get the sense he's the kind of guy that knows about that. Seeing as we had a long, in-depth conversation about 3D printing and its possible effects on minor league baseball, not that long ago. So I feel like I'm going to get a DM about this. Either way, the dude's 37. He's only played college baseball at Rutgers. It's seemingly his only meaningful experience, and the whole press release was more or less talking about the former Rutgers baseball coach Fred Hill, who has since passed. So, I don't really know what to make of this one. I gotta be honest. It does, if I'm being brutally honest, it feels like a step down from Fiorello. It just does. Like, I get it. Yeah. Justin had no experience either, but he had results in the track record and he moved up to the Atlantic League. So I don't really know what to make of this. I would have liked to at least seen a dude with, having worked in baseball sometime in the past decade.
Look, I think that, yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of wow experience on the resume. I do appreciate the Rutgers talk, though.
Yeah.
That always makes me happy. Fred Hill's a legend. Fred Hill's an absolute legend, but I guess they decided to make a whole press release about Fred Hill, which I don't know why.
Which wasn't even
talking about hype.
Yeah, what's weird too is if you go to the bottom of that page, I call it a press release because they put it up on the website and it seemingly acts as they're introducing our new GM. And yeah, it isn't actually by the team. It's actually like a feature or part of a feature written by, it says it in the link in the show notes. It says who it's by. It's one of the, I can't pronounce the name because I forget who wrote it. It's like Carl, and I forget the last name, and I forget who.
Barbady, probably.
Yeah, that's it. That's the name. It's Barbady. So it's not actually by the team. It's just like the team took it and they're like, hey, if you're going to talk about this, we're going to put it on the website. And they used that as they're like, meet our new GM. And that's great. I would have liked to see like a formal press release or something. It would have been nice so that way I could at least know who the hell this guy is. Because I tried Googling, I tried researching, and I couldn't really find much outside of played at Rutgers and that one piece. So like, I want to be a little bit more critical here. I really want to kind of get into the weeds here, but there's nothing at all that I can really go in at except for, again, like a little bit of experience. And I also really don't see what the hell the relevance of blockchain and Web3 is when running a minor league baseball team in Sussex County, New Jersey. Of course, again, I assume someone will probably tell me what the hell blockchain and Web3 is and their relevancy here. But even still, I would have liked to see, more operational experience in the sports entertainment sector. That would have been nice.
And that's the more common, I guess, stepping stone with these positions. So it's interesting, but at least on the surface, and you're right, no press release is kind of odd.
Yeah,
I'd like to know more about him. But I think that there's a lot of time to try to prove to prove everybody right, and he's young and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely. At least the resume is a little bit light, I guess, for what I was expecting here, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, at least the resume that we know, so we'll see where this goes. But in any event, we got a Pioneer League North review to get to. If you want to go back and listen to our full thoughts on the Pioneer League, and the ones that we're really reacting to, it is episode 168, so you can go listen to that either now and then come back to this, or you can wait until you're done listening to this and go over to that episode there. Any case, we got 5 teams to go over. This is actually probably going to be fairly quick because, let me tell you this, it only took about 10 minutes to listen to all the review that we're going to do. I'm not going to lie to you. We went through the Pioneer League very quick, back in April and May when we first previewed them. So, we'll kick it off like we do all of them. We're going to go in the same order that we started previewing them in. We're going to review them in. So, Billings gets us going. They were 44 and 52 and 21. They improved. In fact, you can even say it was a turnaround. 53 and 41 in 22. They made the first round. pushed Missoula to the very brink, but unfortunately lost in a best of 3 series, so a first round exit for them. We really didn't go into too much detail on this team. We didn't go into too much detail on any of these teams, to be quite honest, because we were still trying to figure it out and learn the ropes of the Pioneer League. But we were big on Riggleman being the manager of the team. We thought that was extremely interesting and could very well help the team, and it looks like it did on some level. We thought they were one of the better teams in the league, which I suppose they were. And we were big on Logan Doobie and I believe it's Tristan Peterson as kind of the leading pieces of this team. Obviously with Doobie, we were like, wasn't great in the Frontier League, but a Frontier League player should do really well in the Pioneer League. And at some level we were right, and I think overall we were pretty spot on about Billings.
Yeah, we were. And I mean, at the end of the day, they're the second best record in the league, so they were quite good. And unfortunately just ended up in the same division as Missoula, so they couldn't, play each other in the championship series. Sorry, third best record in the league. What am I saying? Can't do math. But yeah, I think as far as, and I know Riggleman's not back, but I think it was certainly a strong year. Clearly, statistically led by pitching. They had the best pitching staff in the league. They had a better pitching staff than Missoula, and quite a bit over really the rest of the league. Who was around 6, and that's kind of just in general what the Pioneer League is. That's not a slight as far as them as an independent league. That's just the atmosphere that they play at. The ball absolutely flies, and it's even been like that when they were an affiliated league too. The offensive numbers are severely inflated, but yeah, Billings had a terrific pitching staff, really for this league, and gave up by far the fewest amount of homers as well. So certainly led by pitching, and hell, they were able to push Missoula, which was such a good team. They were able to push them into a great series. But yeah, really, really good year for Billings. And we'll see how that changes under new management.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that as well. I thought Billings was maybe not necessarily surprised, because we both were kind of high on them going into the year. But they just had a misfortune of playing in the same division as Missoula. I thought they did very well against them in the postseason. They got kind of hot late. So they had a really solid year, I thought overall, in a regular circumstance where you don't have a team that wins nearly 70 games out of 96, that, it would have been a perfectly good year, a very solid year. Going 12 games above 500 is always a positive thing. And the turnaround from the year prior where you were, 8 games under 500, definitely solid. And there was certainly, like you mentioned, the pitching was definitely a positive in this league. Just doesn't really pay to build around pitching because the ball is going to fly, like you said. And generally speaking, I thought it was an overall good year for the Mustangs. I don't think there's any real complaints you could have.
Definitely not a lot of complaints. It's a really solid squad, and I think any time in the Pioneer League you can have the team ERA under 5, that's a real, in relative to the league and the atmosphere that you're playing at, it's really impressive, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. And yeah, really, really good year for them.
Definitely. We move on to Glacier next. New team for 22, so they didn't play in 21. They went 39-56 in 22, obviously missing the postseason. Brant Broussard, Ryan Cash, all were guys that we really liked. Austin Steinfort was a guy that we thought was a really cool possibility. He could really kind of build up. We figured Atlantic League guy, he could pretty well do well in the Pioneer League. At the very least, he was all right in the Empire League, so why not give it a shot here? Team we thought maybe could be a surprise team. Obviously, didn't quite work out that way, which is, disappointing. But a first-year team, attendance is more the winning goal with this kind of a club. And overall, the Kalispell-based program, I thought it was okay. Not great, not terrible. And by far the worst team in this, by far the worst team in this division, but even still, not terrible, I guess.
Yeah, I think ultimately the offense is kind of what hurt them. And again, it's funny, you look at a team slash line of 284, 366 on base, and a 430 slugging percentage, and any other league that's like, wow, that's a really friggin' good offense. And in the Pioneer League, it's not.
Yeah, it's Ray Navarrete's career / line, and it just wasn't
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny to look at these leagues kind of like relative, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely towards the bottom offensively. And pitching wise, third best ERA in the league, behind Billings and Missoula. I think that certainly deserves something. I don't think, at least statistically, they should have had as poor of a record as they did. So curious if there were more like very close losses in there, but I mean, they look like a little bit better than what a 39-56 team should be.
Yeah.
Again, though, like you have to also factor in that they're playing a very difficult schedule, in that division too. So, but, the pitching was quite good, but offensively, I guess compared to the rest of the league, kind of struggled a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's just it. Like, and that's going to be the kind of thing I say across the board with all these teams is, you're going to win through batting. Like, normally you need the pitching element of it. I feel like when you're in the Pioneer League, you almost kind of go, all right, it doesn't matter who we have pitching. They're going to have a bad ERA. They're going to have bad numbers because, frankly, everyone around here does. Just because of the nature of playing in, kind of great sky country. It's just not going to work. So you just got to double in on the batting. And like you said, well, the numbers weren't there, even though anywhere else they'd be pretty solid. But in the Pioneer League, you just kind of need crazy video game-esque numbers at the dish to really be in contention.
Exactly. And that's, and Glacier didn't have that, so that definitely put them a step below. And, obviously they finished in last in the division, so that put them below the other teams in that North Division.
Well, yeah, maybe they could have a nice turnaround like our next team, Great Falls, did. They were 39-57-21. They turned it around and were 48-47-22. So a pretty solid turnaround. They missed the postseason, but what we said about this team was there's not a lot there. But then again, we didn't admittedly know a lot of the Pioneer League players, which anyone covering independent league baseball has that fun of trying to figure out who Pioneer League players are. But the two guys we really circled in on were Michael Deeb. We thought he was a pretty solid bat, and Montana Quigley, but more or less because Montana Quigley's name is fantastic, especially for the Pioneer League. I mean, they got 4 teams in Montana between Missoula and Glacier and Billings, and there's got to be at least one more. So, that's just a great name, Montana Quigley. Objectively, fantastic name. 80 grade name. That said, team, not great. Pretty middling. I thought they were fine, but, they were what they were.
Yeah, the mediocre team for sure, but I think they also deserve a lot of credit for improving the way that they did.
Yeah, definitely.
From the previous year. And so mediocre is definitely a step up from what the Voyagers had a year ago. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for that, especially in that division. But yes, statistically they were pretty mediocre on both sides of the ball, and what does that turn out to? 48-47 record. So that's about right. But I think the good news is though is they're continuing to make steps in the right direction as they transition, as all these teams are to a full-time independent team. But yeah, they're pretty mediocre, but hey, they're continuing to make steps in the right direction.
Exactly, and that's really all you're looking for, is just to see positive improvement. That's not something that could be said about Idaho Falls, though, who also missed the postseason, but they were 58-39-21. They fell to 500, 48-48-22. And this was a team I think we were kind of higher on. We both were talking about them as one of the better teams in this division, simply because you had a guy like a Matt Feinstein and Andrew Dunn, Ramsey Romano, who went from a position player to a pitcher for a hot minute there, Alex Fishberg, guy that was with Boulders for a minute, Hunter Hinsky, who was solid in 21, still all right in 22, certainly. But there was a lot to like on the team. We actually knew a lot of the names, and I think that's why we were kind of higher on them. And it felt like they should have been better than they were, but just didn't quite have the results.
No, they didn't, and they definitely disappointed. The pitching wasn't very good, towards the bottom half of the league. as well. But it's funny, you look at, they were second in the league in runs scored. So so offensively, they were quite good. I mean, at the end of the day, they led the entire league in batting average at 325. Not a lot of power though, which not a whole lot of power, which I think is notable. But yeah, the pitching really hurt them. And you could make the argument that they probably should have been better than a 500 team. But you're right, the talent was there. The talent was undoubtedly there, because I don't remember 100%, but I could imagine we were talking about Billings and Idaho Falls competing for the second spot.
Oh, no, we were talking about them competing for them being the two top teams.
With them in Missoula?
Yeah, no, we didn't even mention Missoula.
We didn't say Missoula was going to be good?
What we had said, and I guess we'll blend Missoula talk into Idaho Falls
crap,
talk.
This is so long ago.
Yeah. So we thought there was a lot of good returning talent, but we just didn't really have a strong feeling on them either way. And I think if I could just go ahead and, kind of go down the hole on it a little bit, I'm pretty sure our thought process was, well, they're not going to win 60 plus games again. That's kind of a fluke. You got to be really like that. And more importantly, we were like, all right, well, we know guys on Billings and Idaho Falls. Admittedly, it's just kind of like the upper part of the talent. So we'll go with the guys that had the upper part of the talent. And you figure, push comes to shove, a former major league bench coach will probably be a decent manager on this level. I'm pretty sure that was our thought process on it. That said, when we got to Missoula, that was 66 and 32 and 21, wound up going 69 and 26 and 22. We were just kind of like, Schlatt's a good manager. It's a good thing he got extended, but we don't really know. And I think that if you would have went back and asked us, maybe you would have said, oh yeah, maybe they'll win the second half and get in like that. But that was not a team that we really talked about as a serious piece. Billings was, and Idaho Falls was.
Interesting. Well, good to know, and I guess good to know that Idaho Falls definitely fell short of our.
They fell short of
our expectations. So yeah, disappointing year for them. I know it looks like they had they were poor to end the season, had a bad finish. But yeah, disappointing year for Idaho Falls for sure.
Certainly. And I guess while we're on it, thoughts on Missoula there, who was essentially a tank, and Jason Newman said, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, well, they hit the crap out of the baseball. I mean, that's the best way. Sometimes, Nick, when you got to make it simple and be like, yeah, this team hits the absolute shit out of the baseball. And that's what they do. I mean, they slashed as a team 324 batting average, right. 392 on base. So nearly 40% of their plate appearances they were getting on base. And a slugging percentage of .527, led the league in home runs by a wide margin. Number one in the league in runs scored as well. They had the fewest strikeouts, the second fewest strikeouts in the league. And as the fewest strikeouts in the league actually were a team that you would not expect, and that's the Rocky Mountain Vibes, who went 37 and 56. But I think that Missoula was just a complete wagon. But you know, it is the way that why baseball is such a beautiful game is that you can just steamroll everybody throughout the regular season, get to the postseason, everything's in a small sample. And then it just doesn't work out for you in a short time span in a postseason series, and you end up coming back with nothing. But it shouldn't take away from what an unbelievable year that they had. But you know, it's kind of crazy. Like, I mean, you think about it, of course, the Dodgers are the best example of this in Major League Baseball. I think Missoula and the Dodgers are pretty comparable. Yeah,
winning percentages too.
Yeah, they are, and so. It's crazy. You can go 69 and 26, but you know, ended up losing in the championship series, and but you know, it shouldn't take away from what a dominant regular season that they had, though.
Yeah, no, definitely shouldn't. And I mean, you win nearly 70 games. You're a pretty damn good ball club, regardless of the level you're on. And yeah, it just is unfortunate that they got to the finals. They lost, to what would eventually become the Jackalopes, but at the time was the Rockies. And overall, as a team, it does, in hindsight, kind of look like how could we possibly have not foreseen them making the postseason. But more than that, though, I think you kind of have opposite sides of the coin here, where Idaho Falls and Missoula were both like, okay, offense is what's going to win us these games. Let's go for offense. And on one hand, it worked. The other hand, it didn't work. Of course, with Missoula, they got some pitching support as well. So I guess the moral of the story is try to be average in pitching and then just go all in elsewhere on batting, and you'll probably do well. And then just hope that the last 6 games of the year break your way.
Yeah, I know, and sometimes it's that simple, and Schaumburg Boomers have figured it out.
Yeah,
I hate to keep bringing them up as the example of getting hot at the right time, but man, they are the best example in all of like everything.
Yeah, I mean they're built for postseason play. They just want to get there. They almost said like, can we just skip the regular season? We're gonna find a way in. Like let's play the important games.
They're like the Syracuse Orange when, like, not including these past couple of years. But like,
not including the last decade of the Jim Boeheim era.
No, not the last decade. I'm talking like the last, like, 2 years. Like, they'd be like Syracuse. Like, they kind of are average to mediocre during the regular season. They get in, they squeak in, like, as a bubble team. Maybe have to play in the first four. And then, boom. Postseason time. Wow, they're in the Sweet 16. Wow, they're in the Final Four. Amazing.
It really is. It really is. And we're going to do a little college basketball talk in a second once we wrap this up. But it is very much like that when it comes to Schaumburg. And funny enough, orange is their primary color too. Maybe it's a thing of color. Probably a thing of color. Yeah. But any case, last little bit, the only predictions we had, I will kind of give you a preview to next week when we do our last of the league reviews, which will be the Pioneer League South. We're both taking Ogden in that one, by the way. But, Will, you were split between Billings and Idaho Falls, between which one you were going to take to make the finals in this division, but you wound up going with Billings. So, by far the closest to being right out of everyone, because you have 2 playoff teams of the 4. And you almost were pretty right on this, actually, because if that last game breaks a little bit differently, Billings makes the finals. I had Idaho Falls and Ogden, and I had Idaho Falls winning everything. So that's just about all we have on the Pioneer League North. Yeah,
well, I guess not exactly how I drew it up, but I guess I was close.
Yeah, better than I was, so... On that note, that does it for us this week. That's all the news we have. That's all the reviews we have. We have, like I said, the Pioneer League South to do next week. We'll have news for you next week. But until then, we got to go to the plugs, and then we'll get out of here. If you want to follow the show, you can do so on Twitter at IndieBallPod. You can do so on Instagram at ALPB_news and at IndieBallReport. You can also find everything that we talked about today, all the links and everything, in our show notes on the website, IndieBallReport.com. Articles also go up there occasionally, as well as every single episode, so be sure to check that out. And you can find the show wherever you find podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, Podomatic, Google Podcast. You guys know the whole thing. Wherever you find podcasts, the show is there. So rate, review, subscribe. That said, do we have anything else left to add?
So I'm gonna leave what you're gonna say to you. Yeah. I know what you're gonna say. I want to give you the floor for that. I will say, of course, if you're a college hoops fan, Jim Boeheim retired after they lost in the ACC tournament to Wake Forest. Another terrible year for Syracuse. I will say, I think I've said very passionately on this show that it is time for Jim Boeheim to retire. He was definitely overstayed by a few years, I would say. And especially, I thought that when, Buddy Boeheim and Jimmy Boeheim were out, I was kind of assuming, like, all right, that'd be the perfect time for Boeheim to announce his retirement. Definitely stayed a year or two too long. Pretty sure that, like, he didn't totally retire, kind of got forced out a little bit, but regardless. However, though, on the positive side, obviously Jim Boeheim made Syracuse basketball and made it what it is, made it into the program with the prestige that it has. So definitely big thank you to Jim Boeheim, because he had an unbelievable coaching career, and I'm not going to let the end of it. I'm not going to let the last 2 or 3 years sour the first 44. Just an unbelievable coaching career, and very excited for the Adrian Autry era. And I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for something new. I'm excited. Autry certainly a deserving candidate to take the reins. So I'm really excited to see what he does as well, and to see what Syracuse basketball turns into, and hopefully it ends up. Hopefully the transition ends up a lot closer to Duke than North Carolina.
Oh, well, I don't love having another team in the ACC figure it all out. It was kind of nice not having to worry about Syracuse for about 7 years. It was very nice. But that said, congrats to Syracuse basketball for finally being freed of someone that refused to buy a team, in his own words. So, good for Boeheim.
True.
That being said, I can't wait any longer. I got to take my victory lap here, because,
do it.
You know, what fun is it to not do it? So, you know, John Rothstein, if you're a college basketball fan, you know who he is. He's just like lives, breathes, and does everything college basketball. On April 23rd of 2022 at 4:34 p.m. said, R.J. Davis is returning to North Carolina next season per his Twitter page. If Caleb Love does the same, which he did, the 2023 national title will go through Chapel Hill. Well, maybe the National Invitational Tournament title is going to go through there, because it sure as hell ain't going to wind up being the actual national championship.
You get an extra home game.
Yeah. Like, look, they're playing for the money. And what was great for me was watching part of that Hubert Davis press conference, because that's a man that's just defeated. It really is. And I gotta really applaud the Duke base, because after Virginia beat UNC last night to essentially kill their any thin hopes of making the tournament, which Duke pretty much did on Saturday, which was so much fun to watch. But they put out a shirt, and it's on my personal Twitter if you want to go look at it. But it says, proudly sending UNC to the NIT, March Sadness awaits, and has the two final scores from both games, 62-57 and 63-57, with the Duke pitchfork on it. So it's so much fun watching UNC lose, and they were just pathetic, really. And it looks like they're not even going to accept the NIT bid, which is horrible. Because as I tweeted, horrible. I said, horrible. I was looking forward to Speedy Claxton and Hofstra men's basketball beating them like a drum. I mean, this is just disappointing. I was really hoping, because in my beautiful sense, I was like, what would be beautiful is if Hofstra beats like UNC and Seton Hall en route to winning the NIT. That's perfectly acceptable in my mind. I'd love that scenario.
I agree.
I mean, Will, I know you agree. I mean, you'd love to see them win the NIT and go, well, that's a very good season. And honestly, for mid-major programs, it would be a fantastic season. It'd be great for a mid-tier program like UNC too to win a couple rounds in the NIT, because we know that's all they're doing.
Program building, baby.
Exactly. They got to. I mean, when you lose a cornerstone piece like Brady Manick, you know, how can you expect to have that kind of success? And what was so much fun watching these two was, we're just watching Leaky Black throw up wide open threes, and you can see the Duke defensive plan was like, all right, keep shooting them.
Yeah, Leaky Black, man. Dude, that he cannot shoot. He cannot hit the broadside of the barn.
Like, that was the amazing part. And that's why, like, the Final Four game last year, we were like, he makes the contested ones, but he misses the open ones. That's why we were annoyed. And it's like, all right, it just proves what all the Duke people were saying last year, but we were told, oh, we're being sore losers. It's sour grapes. We were right. It was just an insanity run. They got hot at the right time. Applause to them. You know, I give them congratulations. They were good until the halftime of the national championship game, in which case then they became the program to blow the largest halftime lead in the national championship game. And
Nick,
now
did Did you see what Armando Bacot said post game though?
Oh no, I did not. What did he say?
So the question from the reporter was, how do you? I think that was a pretty fair and good question. He said, do you think you guys struggled dealing with the expectations of being the preseason number one team? And do you think that was a big reason the season went the way it did? And Bacot gave the most, and I'll give him a lot of respect for this. He gave a really honest response.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, to be honest with you, those expectations just come from y'all. I guess we just weren't that good. Go look up the video. He said it.
Fantastic. We just weren't that good. Like, I do respect that on some level.
He's right, though.
Yeah. But man, I love this. See, I was told that they're going to be a senior leadership core, and that's why they're going to be a threat this year. These UNC guys, they're just not used to having expectations on them. They can't handle it under the lights. If they went down the road to Duke where you're expected to win, like it's been the expectation. There's like a 10-year block in our history where there wasn't as high of expectation. But outside of that, since like the 60s, we've kind of been expected to perform and make the tournament. And that's when there was like 12 teams making the tournament. So like, man, I love that answer though. You gave us the expectations. We just weren't that good.
Yeah.
God. So, see, the problem is, being slanted and biased on this, I would have really had to fight the urge to ask the follow-up question. So what you're saying is, you guys were like the classes you take. They existed only on paper, but in reality, they weren't there.
What is it, Swahili? The class that like all the athletes take Swahili?
It's something like that. I know they all wound up going with general studies or some crap like that. And it's like, okay, these are paper classes. Mm-hmm. Oh, God. But yeah, that is fantastic. I love that answer. We weren't that good. Yeah. Oh, God. But, yeah, I'm taking my victory lap. Go to hell, Carolina. Yeah. So, there's your college basketball talk for the week. It's going to continue throughout the month, although I will admit, next week I'm probably going to talk college hockey because we're closing in on Frozen Four time. But, yeah, so that's all we got. And until next time, I guess don't forget to play ball.